that was rescheduled from February 12th to this date. Before I get into the agenda, I would like to make note that the planning board has a policy of not starting any application item after 9 p.m. And where we rarely have to call upon this policy, we have a full agenda this evening, and it is very likely that we will not get to any of the new business items. We may not even finish the old business items. I just want people in the audience to know that now. We will not be starting any new application item after 9 o'clock. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the January 8th, 2020 regular meeting and the special meetings of January 22nd, 2020, and January 29, 2020, which we do not have.
You do not have,
We'll
right.
continue to January 29. So let's start with the minutes of January 8th, 2020.
Move approval. Second.
A motion is made to approve, motion is made and seconded to approve the minutes of the January 8th meeting. Any discussion?
Just a comment on item number, on page 7, Ron, item number 3, just not a complete sentence to me.
Say that again. Page 7, which item?
Number 3 at the very top, go to the number 3, that's not, I don't understand what that meant. And I think I know what you're trying to say, but
Well, we can revise it.
adding signage at north entrance and additional conditions in the, just I think missing a portion of it,
Missing a word or two.
word 2.
Other comments? I have some comments. Page 1, the members present, you've got Art twice, and you don't have Joe. So I think the second Art should be Joe Pyrrhic. On page 3, the third bullet from the bottom, Ms. Small offered to move the rain garden, and it should say 15 feet closer to the house. On page 7, 5B, requested the impact study be added to the report and it be forwarded to the town council. Was it forwarded to the town council? The impact study?
They have the draft, yes.
They do have the draft.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know that there was a formal referral to the town council.
I don't think there was.
Probably not, but
Yeah.
that would happen after it's finalized anyway.
Well, I think we should strike it from these minutes. And on page 8, on the upcoming meetings, you've got February 12th. You should at least parenthetically say it was moved to February 5th. We have an amended motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes of the January 8th, 2020 meeting as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Next, we have the minutes of the January 22nd special meeting on the Atlantic Beach Overlay District. You have a motion to approve these minutes.
Motion made.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the January 22nd, 2020 minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Correspondence. We have a number of correspondence items, some of which were distributed this evening. I have a memo from Ron Wolanski to the Chairman of the Planning Board, Administrative Subdivision, Stephen F. Brown, Sharon L. Brown, Catherine M. Wheeler, Lawrence M. Toronto, property located at 20 Seascape Avenue and 177 Aquidneck Avenue, Plat 115 SE, lots 17, 18, 47, and 48. May I have a motion to receive this correspondence?
Motion to receive the said memo.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Correspondence is received. I have a memo to the town planner, from the town planner to the finance director dated January 27, 2020, regarding recommendation on consultant selection for MIDD-020-007 sewer impact fee update study. May I have a motion to receive this correspondence?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to receive the correspondence. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Correspondence is received. And I have a memo from Ann Spate to Ron Wolanski dated January 31st, 2020, subject photos of water issue pond at 206 Peckham Avenue. May I have a motion to receive this correspondence?
Motion to receive.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to receive this correspondence. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The correspondence is received. The next item is a continuance of item 4B. Is that still the plan to, Mr. Lynch?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Lynch on behalf of Mr. Gullison. We're going to have to continue that matter. The matter is going to have to be re-advertised and referred back to the TRC. So I don't know if we just want to continue it 1 month for status.
So the request is to continue to the March 11th meeting?
Yes, please.
We have a motion to continue this item to the March
So
11th
moved.
meeting.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to continue this item. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued to the March 11th meeting. Next item on the agenda is item 4A, a public informational meeting, request of Ellery Yahia for master plan approval of a 3-lot subdivision, including proposed new road and request for waivers from certain provisions of Article 5 and Article 6 of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land. The applicant is requesting that the board consider approval of the conventional subdivision design rather than a 4-lot conservation design plan. The property is located at the intersection of Peckham Avenue and Vaucluse Avenue and is identified as 206 Peckham Avenue, tax assessors plat 128, lot 31. Mr. Lynch.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Jay Lynch from the law firm of Moore, Vergadamo, and Lynch. I'm here on behalf of the applicant this evening. Just to give you a little bit of background where we are, the property is located at 203 Peckham Avenue in Middletown. Right now, there are 3 units on the site. There is a main house with 1 dwelling unit, and then there is a detached second structure with a 2-family structure there. We were in front of you back in December for master plan approval on a proposed 4-lot subdivision. We started the hearing. We heard comments from the board and also from the neighbors. So we went back to the drawing board, and we now are before you with master plan approval, or proposal for master plan approval for a 3-lot subdivision, conventional 3-lot subdivision And pursuant to your rules and regulations, we had to provide you with the the conservation plan, which is a 4-lot conservation plan. And we are going to be asking this board to permit us to proceed with the conventional plan. First, I just want to go through some of the particulars concerning the conventional plan. What we're proposing is to create a 3-lot conventional plan. Lot number 1 is going to be the lot that fronts on Peckham, and that's the house with the lot with the existing dwelling unit. The 2 new lots are going to be to the rear of the property, and they're going to be accessed by a private right-of-way, which is going to require waivers from the board, and I'll get into the waivers later on. The 2 other existing structures on the site will be removed because they're in the location of the right-of-way. All 3 lots in this subdivision are going to be serviced by a well, a private well for each lot, and each dwelling will have its own private septic system. There are some changes that you'll find on this plan. If you recall back to December, what we did is we have moved the driveway that services the 3 lots further to the east. We have moved it away from the neighbor to the west, the Dickinsons. They were concerned about what impact the roadway would have on their existing well. So my clients had met with them and described this new plan where we're moving the roadway further to the east. And I believe the Dickinsons are here. I think that they are satisfied with what we've proposed. In addition, what we've done is we have lined up the roadway directly across from the intersection of Vaucluse and Peckham. Before, we were a little off kilter, and there were some concerns about what impact that would have on traffic safety. So now we have moved the access point so it's directly across from Vaucluse. In addition, what we've also proposed is to include a 10-foot pedestrian access area, which is going to be on the west side of the proposed roadway. I know that there was some concern last time about safety issues, about how the people in the back lots are going to, children, et cetera, are going to be able to traverse from the rear lots out to Peckham. So we have proposed on the plan a 10-foot wide pedestrian area. The waivers that we're seeking for the conventional plan, there are several. First, we're seeking a waiver from section 501. A couple of reasons. The proposed roadway is not going to have access to the adjacent parcel. The property to the east is an undeveloped lot. Under the regs, we're supposed to have a connection to that area. I know that the neighbors are in favor of us not connecting to that property, so we're asking this board from a waiver from that section of the regulations requiring us to connect, to have a stub road out to the abutting properties. Also, we're looking for a waiver from 504. We're proposing a permanent, it's designed as a cul-de-sac, but it's not. We're not going to be developing a cul-de-sac. what's going to be proposed is just a roadway coming down and then diverting off into 2 driveways. So there's going to be a paper cul-de-sac on the plan, and that's going to be our means of access. We're also looking for a waiver from Section 602. We're going to be requesting that the paved width of the roadway from Peckham to the back of the properties be reduced from 26 feet to 20 feet. So we're going to be proposing some type of a pervious pavement. When we come back, hopefully for preliminary plan, we'll go over those particulars, but we are going to have a narrower roadway. Also, at this point, we haven't provided any landscaping plan for street trees. My client has every intention of properly landscaping the site, but at this point, we don't have a landscaping plan. We don't have any street trees proposed, so we're asking for a waiver from that section of the ordinance as well. And again, just realizing that we are at master plan approval, I can represent to the board that we will be coming back at the preliminary stage with a more detailed plan, including landscaping. If I can just briefly touch on the reasons why we believe that the board should approve the conventional plan rather than the conservation plan. I think we're obligated to prove that one of the criteria is true. I think we can demonstrate that there are probably 2 or 3 of the criteria for the approval of the conventional system is appropriate. Number 1, I believe that the conventional plan, the conservation plan will not offer any significant public and/or environmental benefit compared to the conventional plan. Under the conservation plan, we could put 4 dwellings on this site. That's 4 septic systems, 4 wells. With the conventional plan, we're only going to be having 3 lots that are going to be developed. So we've got 3 septic systems and only 3 wells. So that's an environmental benefit with the conservation plan. Second, the conservation plan would cause a nuisance to neighboring uses and will be detrimental to the appropriate use of neighboring properties. We believe that the conservation plan would add an additional dwelling in this area. An additional dwelling is additional traffic and additional noise for the neighborhood. We think with the the conventional plan, that is a reduction or will reduce any impact on the neighboring uses in the area. I do have 2 witnesses this evening who would like to speak. One of them is one of the owners of the property. I can have him come up. He can introduce himself, and he can explain their plan and their scheme and of what they're going to do for the development of the site. I also have Lynn Small, who is here, and she will go over the plan in detail, and she'll be able to answer any technical questions that you may have. So if you don't have any questions of me, I'll bring my client up.
Just hold on one second. Do we have to open a motion to open the public informational hearing?
You can.
Or can
It's not a public hearing, but
So-
if you want to make a motion,
Sorry.
that's fine.
We'll do it informally.
Hello, everyone. My name is Darren Hartig, and I'm here with my fiancée, Ellery Haya, back in the corner over there. We wanted to quickly introduce ourselves and put a face to this project. We are the owners of 206 Peckham Ave and the applicants for the proposed subdivision, although we don't consider ourselves developers in the traditional sense. This process is totally new to us, and we appreciate all the feedback and advice we've received so far. It's been quite a learning curve. We feel like this latest plan is a huge improvement from our original plan presented back in November. We think it is more in line with our vision and the vision of the town. Our goal was always to create an enclave of energy-efficient farmhouses on a quiet drive that really evoke the rural and farmland atmosphere of the town and its history. We are currently fixing up the existing single-family structure to meet this vision. We've been working really hard getting it ready and are so excited to be moving in soon. We do plan on living here and are really invested in creating something beautiful that complements the neighborhood. We've been communicating openly with abutters and incorporating their feedback and listening to their concerns. We feel like this conventional plan today is a result of that, and we're really excited to share this latest plan with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Small, Northeast Engineers. We're now at 6 Valley Road in Middletown. We moved on Monday, that's a big deal. So I am here representing the owners. We'll be doing the survey and the design work for them. We are proposing a 3-lot subdivision. One of them is already developed. There are 3 structures on the existing property. They will be relocating the garage to support the main house that is going to be on the corner of the new right-of-way and Peckham Lane. But the other building will be demoed, and we'll be hopefully constructing 2 single-family houses further back in the property. The proposal includes the construction of a common driveway. We're going to try to use as many pervious materials as we can in all of our designs to help with some of the drainage concerns that we've heard from the owner and some of the neighbors in the area. This site does prove to have some challenges with an elevated water table, and it doesn't have a huge slope across of the site, so there will be some design challenges that it's good to have that feedback at this early stage in the project. We do have 3 wells that we'll be proposing. The existing well that services the property right now is located within what will be the right-of-way, so we will be putting in a new well for the home, along with two additionals to support the new homes. We'll do everything we can to preserve the nice trees. There's a few decent trees on site. Most of it is an open farm field, but there's a few nice trees on site, and I know that the owners are hoping to preserve those where we can. This project includes, will be required by the state to go through a subdivision suitability process, even though we're not proposing a roadway on this project, to ensure that the site can safely support 3 septic systems. We'll also have to do a RIPD's permit and they'll be reviewing the drainage system designs. We don't have any wetlands within the vicinity of this site, so it wouldn't have to go through that program, but it's basically the same reviewers for the most part as the RIPD's program is, as far as the engineers are concerned. And then of course we'll be back to see you, which will probably be a few months from now, because we'll have to get all those state permits first.
Elaine, what was that program you mentioned that you're pursuing?
The RIPD's permit?
RIPD?
Yeah, RIPD's, RIPDES. It's regulated through DEM. I mean, federally it's regulated through EPA, but every area does their own regulation, and that review goes through the DEM process. When we have a site that has over an acre of disturbance, we're required to have them review that project. Many times on Aquidneck Island, we have wetlands within the vicinity. When that happens, they do that review simultaneously, so you may not always hear that the RIPD's permit is existing, but it does anytime we have over an acre of disturbance. This site doesn't have wetlands, so it will just be that RIPD's permit review.
So RIPD's is referring to stormwater, so that's the stormwater review.
Exactly. It's done by engineers up at the state. As is the subdivision suitability. They just focus more on the septic systems and well locations of the site and the surrounding properties. We do know that we have some adjacent abutters to the project that have voiced some concerns regarding drainage. We're going to do everything we can to ensure that there is no changes, adverse impacts to their property. As you all know, we're required to demonstrate that the development of the site will have no adverse impacts to any abutting properties. But knowing that those conditions exist today gives us more focus in making sure we're paying attention to those specific concerns of those neighbors during the design phase. That's generally what we have As I can reiterate that we're looking to try to do the 3-lot subdivision versus the 4-lot conservation development. That will be up to you. They understand it wouldn't be a public roadway, so all of the maintenance of the common driveway would be on the homeowners, and we'll have to have a homeowners association like we do for most subdivisions these days, but in addition to maintaining their drainage system, they're going to have to maintain their shared access. We did incorporate in the design, from the comments that we received from you the last time we were in front of you, a 10-foot wide grass walkway down the side of the common driveway to ensure that we don't have to have anyone walking within the travelway. So I don't know if anyone has any specific questions.
Comments from planning board members?
Yeah, I have comments there.
I think we need more information.
This is for master plan approval only.
Yes, I believe.
So, if I do have a question, go ahead. Thanks, Lynn. Ron and Lynn, I think the first thing that we need to do as a board, and we will when we start, is decide if we're going to accept the conventional versus the conservation, based on the criteria in their testimony. That's the first thing we'll do.
Yeah, you have to make that decision at the master plan stage.
Okay.
So that's
So
now.
when you submitted the conventional, did the TRC get a chance to look at that?
Yes.
TRC did look at that.
Well, not this revised conventional. The TRC reviewed the earlier conventional design as well as the, not the conservation
The
design.
conservation, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So there were actually, I think there were 2 variations of the conventional design that the TRC reviews. This is more similar to the first one that they reviewed. They were responded to you with comments
Right.
on both of those. The comments were essentially the same
Yeah.
for both regarding the need for review by the fire chief of the driveway design and construction.
I was more interested if the TRC has seen the conservation.
They did not review the
Okay.
conservation.
That's what I was, so we have the conservation in front of us, and we need to make a decision at some point on which one we'd like to see you do. And the fact that they haven't seen it doesn't concern me too much. I have a lot of faith in Northeast and you and what you do. But I'll just make a note that plan looks adequate to me. Certainly, I'm not an engineer, but I think it's adequate for me. I'll just make a note that, because it has to do with what I want to chat about when we get to the conventional plan, on the conservation plan that the TRC did not see, your proposed driveways, typical, I know they're typical for the plan, but those are not typical driveways. And I just want to make a point, not that the TRC would have made a call on it, that they're not typical, because I understand they're typical for the plan, but to me, that's not a typical driveway. And I'm only making reference to that because I do have questions on the grassed access, because that was where our concerns were from the beginning. So just make note that, as we see on the plan here, these turnaround driveways, they're not typical driveways that drive up to the house and they're in the front of the garage. They seem to be frankly just planted on the site. And that's fine. I don't have a problem, but I do have further questions relative to the grassed access walkway, and then the ultimate driveways on the site. But just wanted to be clear on the convention versus the conservation. So if it's okay, I'll just continue and ask on the grassed access. To me, that's not really what I was hoping to see. But in relation to, because it's about traffic, and I don't have a problem with the 20-foot wide waiver request, but I do have concerns with people with walking traffic there. I know it's only 2 homes or 3 homes. The grassed access to me is not adequate. not that, and I'm not sure what could be done there, because, I mean, grass is going to come up to the roadway anyway. It's either got, and so to call it a grassed access is, it's still a walkway. I don't know if you do anything different in there than you would if it wasn't a grassed walkway.
So I guess I'll have I'll respond for both options, both subdivision layouts.
Sure.
The conservation plan with the 4 lots has a roadway that comes right up across, which would have to be a paved, impervious surface. So that would support, I suppose, a more conventional sidewalk design if that was something that the board wanted to see if they went forward with that, you know, higher density plan. Like I said, the owners are hoping to go with the 3-lot subdivision, and they are interested in pursuing more pervious type driveway, common driveway ideas for this site because of the known drainage concerns of the neighbors. I don't know how it will look, or I don't know if it's going to be as nice of a design if you have a more pervious surface with then an asphalt or a concrete walkway. I do know the intent to make it 10 feet wide is so that it's a flat surface that doesn't have plantings in it, and it's maintained well so that it keeps it, you know, it stays as a walkable surface so that people who are coming down the driveway don't feel like they have to walk inside, you know, the driveway. They'll have that maintained grass
So if we,
side.
so we can
On
chat
the
about
side.
it as a board, but I just have a little bit of, I'm not convinced that that's the type of access, type of pedestrian access I wanted to see from the previous meeting. Now, in relation to the driveways, if that's the way we go, I want to make sure that the driveways that are on the plan now will be constructed in that respect, because much of our discussion on safety is about where the vehicles that come in and out of there for the various people that own the property, and where they park. And rather than have them park along the driveway or along the side of the driveway, these cul-de-sacs, if you will, or modified cul-de-sacs with an island in the middle, I'm going to want to see those constructed as proposed on the plan. And let me finish. And not a conventional driveway then, where the driveway will just come in and wrap up to the garage itself. I want to see the space there for vehicles to park. If that's not what your intent is, then let's change it now and talk about it now. But if you're putting it on the plan, and that's why I mentioned what we put on the convention, on the conservation versus what's here, you put it there, so I'm going to want to hold you to doing it that way, in my eyes, for safety.
So as far as the conventional 3-lot subdivision plan is concerned, the reason why we made those driveways so that you would be able to loop around was to address the fire department concerns that they raised at the TRCs for the other, that was their only comment, was to make sure that they had a way of turning around if we had a shared driveway. So that's how we addressed that for them.
We intend on doing it that way.
So there will be provisions in place so that the fire department can turn their vehicle around. That's how we're imagining it at this point, so that each homeowner will provide that within their property.
Sure, so I would like to see that as a condition then, if
Okay.
that's the case, make sure we condition it that way.
Now, the conservation plan, we just put those in as placeholders. That has a cul-de-sac, you know, because we have to do the full road, so that would meet the fire code, and then each lot would be limited to a certain amount of impervious area, like we've done for all the subdivisions in town.
So Ron, typically, because we pushed this back, the TRC would have seen both, but they didn't because we were behind.
Yeah, I would suggest that if the board were inclined to go for the conservation design, you would make that decision tonight, and then we could ask the TRC to review it either now or they would review it at the preliminary plan stage anyway. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
So,
I guess, but yeah, I mean, For the record, I support the conventional, but if we decide to go that way, then I would say yes, go back. But generally, they're going to see it anyway, we just got behind on
There
this
was
particular application.
Well,
with
you
the timing.
discussed it at the last meeting, what happened with the submission of plans, right?
Okay, that's fine. So I'm done, but I have some, I'm still uncomfortable with the pedestrian access grass walkway.
Art?
Thank you.
If I can just,
Art, and
if I
then
can just
Mike.
respond to Mr. Nash
Sure,
on that concern.
sure.
Mr. Nash, I know on section 511, it talks about access ways being left in a natural condition. So that's why we propose to have the grass. It indicates that that is acceptable. We leave that access way in its natural condition. That would
Talk into the
comply.
microphone, please.
Sure,
That would comply with 511.
sure, but I understand, Jay, thank you. But if we never had a discussion about safety, pedestrian safety, then we wouldn't be seeing a grassed access, and it would still be the same thing there. So we're just calling it out because we've made it an issue. It's still going to be grass up to the paved surface, and the concern there for me is it may be there on the paper, but the reality is that needs to be maintained and cut and trimmed, and that doesn't always happen. And then you lose your pedestrian access.
And we have no objection. If you want to put a condition on that, there has to be a buffer between the roadway, some type of a buffer between the roadway and the grass area too, that's fine. We're agreeable to that, so you can keep some separation from the travel roadway in the path. So if that's a
How would you do
concern
that?
that you have, whether you can put some small shrubs along the side of the paved roadway, and then have the grass path on the other side of the shrub, so you have some type of a separation. And it's going to be maintained, the roadways are going to have to be maintained by the association. We can put a condition in as well that, the access, the pedestrian access area, that's also the homeowner's responsibility, homeowners association's responsibility to maintain those.
I'll just ask how about what other alternatives are there then?
Well, we can discuss with the owners, possibility of doing, since we're trying to do pervious materials, and they're looking for a real natural look versus, a paved road and a concrete sidewalk, but maybe something more like a crushed stone, something that's a little bit more that you remember. It wouldn't be 10 feet wide, right? We'd bring it back down to a regular sidewalk width, but maybe like a
I could
crushed
live with that.
bluestone dust or something. We might be able to talk to them about other options
I
to
like that
consider
better. It
that might
defines
be
it to
more
me.
distinguished as this is your walking path. But keeping it still more natural, than an asphalt or a concrete.
I like the idea of a buffer, and I like the idea of a
We'll talk to them about it,
bluestone gravelish.
right? Like
Art,
that.
and then Mike?
This is the first time we're going through this exercise of having two different kind of subdivisions. And this was an initiative of the planning board because we always defaulted to conservation. Well, the other one may work just as well. I'm concerned about the process, and I think getting the process right is important. And this one we kind of backed into because we realized we need to get a conservation subdivision opinion. And I talked to the planner about this. I think the TRC should review both the conventional plan and the conservation plan. These are our professional staff here, and I would like to see in the future an opinion from the TRC, maybe with a supporting sentence or two. The conventional plan is the preferred plan because ABC. So
I don't think the TRC is going to give you their preference.
Preference, right.
They'll review the conservation plan and identify any concerns. They're not going to suggest which plan the planning board should
Right.
approve.
That's our purview, Art.
I know,
Not
but
theirs.
I'm not really, I gotta tell you right up front, and I've done this for a long time, I'm not personally equipped to look at every aspect of this plan and be 100% sure I'm making the right choice. I'm making the right choice tonight because I get one less house. That's what I look at. So I'm a little uncomfortable with, I call us civilians up here, and I was hoping the professional staff, when they do a TRC, would be able to help us a little bit more in that. Is that,
The TRC is looking at the technical aspects of it, both plans. So if both plans are in front of them, they're going to
Yeah.
point out the issues that they may have from an engineering standpoint, from a technical standpoint, and improvements that need to be made to each one. But, you know, under the terms of the regulations, you are the body that makes that decision as to which one moves forward. So that's really not on their plate or within their jurisdiction or their role.
Would you be open to getting a real professional opinion on those two, that decision on which one is right or more appropriate, or you want to leave it with us?
I think it needs to be left with you, because you are the body that has that role, and that's really not something that they are or have historically done or.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we have the role, but I'm not sure we have the 100% expertise to get the right answer every time. That's what I'm concerned about. And we need to do that for the applicant.
Well, you do have standards
Yeah.
in the regulations on which you would base that review, on which you would base that decision, some of which Mr. Lynch has recited to you tonight. So, and I know it's something new, but I think it's also something that when you see it, you'll know. So, I have confidence.
One other thing. I would assume, trying to get it right, the other thing, most of the waivers you have here will disappear when we get preliminary plan, because as you said, you're going to have a landscaping plan then, the fire department will be happy and all those kind of things, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Mike and then BJ.
Last week, we had a presentation from Crossman Engineering, and they were talking about the build impact of, you know, for the future, you know, and one of the recommendations, you know, to improve water quality and stormwater runoff was to increase the lot size especially in areas on the east side. So I see, you know, I'm in favor of the conventional plan, because you're reducing the number of homes, you know, in the same area, you know, by one. And to me, that effectively increases the lot size and, you know, meets that objective, you know, for improving, you know, those conditions. I also like the idea that the owners have talked to the abutters and, you know, addressed their concerns and, you know, tried to work, you know, their concerns into their plan. And so overall, I'm in favor of the conventional plan over the conservation plan.
Thank you.
BJ?
Yes, I'm very much for the conventional plan and everything that you've explained for the same reason. I'd rather see 3 homes and one of them is already there, and then rather than 4. I do have a question, and for a bit of levity for this. In your driveway, what kind of a tree is in the middle of the driveway? Because I remember the incident with the birch tree.
Chestnut.
A chestnut? All right, now, the one we had before on Prospect was a birch, and it is, I understand, protected through the national government. So that's why I asked. But I really think that this looks a lot better. And I'm interested in what will be for the landscaping around the property too.
We'll have that in the
Yes,
preliminary submission.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Other comments? Joe, do you have any?
Joe?
I appreciate the efforts coming up with the conventional plan versus the conservation plan. I'm especially grateful for being mindful that you listen to the concerns of the abutters and have moved that driveway further to the east. So yeah, no, I echo the sentiments of others on the board here.
I have a couple of questions. I agree with many of the comments that were made. You mentioned that you would do the best you could to control that water runoff onto neighbors' property. And then you stated, that you must demonstrate it. So I assume you're going to take the latter approach on that.
Right, usually when we have the opportunity to substantially reduce the runoff to a neighbor, we do that in our design. I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to substantially reduce it, but we are obligated to not increase it.
Good.
So, but we'll do our best to reduce it as much as possible.
Work with the neighbors.
We will.
Yeah. My other question is, you're talking about a homeowners association here, but you're really talking about 2 homeowners working together.
Or 3, right.
Why would you're showing the right-of-way totally outside the first lot.
Well, they're gonna be using that right-of-way to access Lot 1 as well.
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna be using
Yeah,
that.
I see
And
that.
they're gonna be part of this.
So it'll be a homeowner association of 3 households.
Yes.
Okay. And they are responsible for maintaining everything that is designated right-of-way, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that will be in a document that is prepared?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Just follow up to BJ's, that tree that she mentioned, looks like it's a large tree. I wasn't here for the site visit, but that's smack dab in the middle of the pedestrian grass area.
Yeah, it's not, it doesn't have a huge, I don't remember offhand how big the you know, the caliper was, but it wasn't like 18 inches or anything. It was, but it does have a nice, it comes out nice. So we want to do the best we can to preserve that.
So presumably, as we've done in past applications, you'll have the tree warden watch over the work around that tree.
Yep.
And the pathway, if necessary, could go around the tree if necessary.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
I have a question. Do we, this is the first time we're dealing with the choice between conventional and conservation. Do we make that choice before opening it up to the public, or do we open it up to the public first?
I would think you want to hear from the public first.
Okay, any other comments from members of the board? Anyone from the public who would like to comment?
I may be heard briefly. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Matt Lees. I'm representing Phil Cohen, Susan Small, Timothy Cohen, and Peter Cohen, who are collectively the owners of 1 Helena Court, which is identified as Tax Assessor's Plat 128, Lot 36B, which is adjacent to the east of the subdivision parcel. We understand that there'll be full engineering details will be made available at the preliminary plan stage, and so we reserve our comments until that time, because many of the concerns are engineering concerns that my clients have. My client's concerns include drainage and stormwater runoff, which was discussed earlier. Where is the water going to be going when it leaves this property? We ask that the applicant look at the larger area, including my client's property. The subdivision parcel slopes towards my client's property and towards their septic system. What will the septic impacts be? What are the well water impacts? One thing we'd like to investigate is the possibility of swapping on Lot 2 the drainage area for the location of the septic system so that it's further away from my client's water well. And other engineering issues that I'm sure will be fleshed out more in the preliminary plan stage. We don't have sufficient information right now to assess those issues. We have not retained an engineer because the information to review is not yet available. Although they're not engineering concerns, my clients also have concerns about screening for the neighborhood adjacent to the east. We understand a landscape plan will be provided at the preliminary plan stage, and we hope that screening for that neighborhood and my client's property is considered in that plan. There's also what we understand to be a very old stone wall along the eastern boundary line for the subdivision parcel, and we hope that that wall is considered in any plan as well. My clients do have a preference for this 3-lot conventional subdivision as it provides less houses, but that preference is subject to review of the engineering details. So we look forward to seeing those further engineering details and participating further in the process. Thank you very much.
Nick,
Thank
Mr. Lees,
Yes.
would you please go to the map and identify your client's lot for us?
Sure. It's this lot right here to the east, so it's this entire boundary line right here is shared with the subdivision parcel and my client's lot.
Thank you.
Where's that stone wall over there?
It's right on the-
Stone wall's right on the boundary line, and it's, if you look carefully, you can, I think it is shown on the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the public?
Yeah, my name's George Perry.
Wait till you get
My
the
name's
mic.
George Perry. That was my grandfather's house. These people are doing a nice job renovating and bringing it back to natural state. And I've observed everything they've done. It's gonna be beautiful back there. That land has always been wet. We used to plant potatoes there. Act of God, the water's gonna go somewhere. They're doing everything they can. And I'm keeping track of it too, because my mom still lives there. They're doing a beautiful job, believe me when I tell you. They're doing everything to please you guys and please us. I think they're doing a fantastic job. So, your walkways, come on, when we were kids, we walked, the road in front of my house is smaller than the road they're proposing. They only pave half of our road when the whole road needs to be done. I don't understand that I gotta lose my dentures coming down the road because you haven't tarred over the creek. They're doing a great job. Believe me when I tell you, Mr. Nash, you know me, so
I know you, yes, I do.
they're not gonna get away with anything.
Thank you.
They're doing a beautiful job.
Thank you for your comments.
Sure. I'm Chris Spate. I'm here with my wife Ann, and we're at 63 James Court. I want to say the same thing. That
Move closer to the mic, please.
I just want to say the same thing. The owners have come over and talked to us a number of times, and the conventional development, their plan now is, much, much better. And we're very, very pleased the way when we've seen the logistics and everything like that. So I just want to convey that we're real, super happy, because we knew that it was going to get developed eventually, but this conventional plan looks like fantastic, so we're, pleased as punch.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else from the public who wishes to comment?
Molly Dickinson, a butter at 192 Peckham. You've heard from me before. We've seen 4 versions recently. The 4-lot conventional with shared driveway, 4-lot conventional with town road, the conservation plan, and this is the 3-lot conventional with shared driveway. We would also like to say that we find this to be the most appealing and best in character with the neighborhood. We have had conversations with the neighbors since and are pleased with the thoughtfulness of this plan, where they look to address the walking, aligning the driveway to the intersection to address safety concerns, moving the driveway further from our well, which is appreciated and noted. Assuming that the drainage concerns of all the neighbors can be addressed in such a way that it improves existing drainage issues rather than causes more problems. We're looking for improvement. Assuming that to be the case, we have no objection to this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the public? Okay. Question before the planning board is, do we have a preference for the conventional or the conservation development? And
So you would have,
do we separate the vote for preference
would think it'd be a
versus
separate vote.
master plan approval?
so you would make a separate
Yeah.
vote first on your choice of
Choice,
plans,
yeah.
and in that, if you're gonna move to have the conventional plan move forward, then you've got findings that you have to make. You have to find that conventional plan would address at least one of those 4 items identified in the memo that I provided to you, and that would be your reasoning for approving the conventional plan versus the conservation plan.
I'll make that motion. Move that we accept it as a conventional plan, that it meets at least one of the criteria as spelled out in January 24th memo.
You might want to identify which one.
Okay? There's 4 there, right?
I would suggest that it meets the first one.
Yeah, I
It
agree.
meets the first
Yeah.
one. Fine, that's fine. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ron.
I have-
Second.
You second? I have a motion and seconded to accept the three-lot conventional plan over the conservation plan, with the first reason being the one for the choice. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion passes, so
So now the
board
action is a
accepts the,
request for master plan approval.
yeah, the board accepts the three-lot conventional design. Now we need to vote on master plan approval of this design.
I'll make a motion to approve master plan.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
And you
to-
A
have,
couple of conditions.
you have 5 findings that you have to make, and there were 4 proposed conditions, as well as, I believe, a 5th additional condition that was requested by Mr. Nash regarding,
Actually, I have 2.
okay, then I'll let you tell me what the additional ones are.
plus the waivers that will.
And the waiver, yeah.
Yeah.
What are the, there's 4 conditions already around?
There's 4 recommended
I see
conditions
that,
in the
yeah.
memo. I know that you were suggesting a condition regarding a sidewalk, and I don't know what your addition,
Yeah, that first condition relative to the sidewalk would be that there's a defined surface alternative to a grassed walkway. I'll leave it at that for now, with
Yeah.
a buffer,
Yeah, I think that's adequate for
with a
now.
buffer for now.
Yeah.
And also that the driveways as indicated on the plan on lots 2 and 3 are constructed as part of the construction. Just want to make that condition.
Now, we are not voting on the waivers just yet, is that correct?
you can wait until preliminary plan
Let's wait on the
stage to consider
waivers,
the
because the waivers
Yes,
include landscaping and other factors, so
yes.
let's hold off on all the waivers for now.
Okay.
So I have that motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to give master plan approval for the three-lot conventional design, subject to all the conditions and whatever else that was put in the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is item 4C, application of Mark Haran for preliminary plan and final plan approval of a three-lot subdivision of land fronting on Lewis Drive and Bailey Avenue, tax assessors Plat 125, lot not 950.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I'm going to recuse myself on this matter, and Ms. Desitel is going to be advising you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Lynch from the law firm of Moore, Vergadamo, and Lynch. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Haran. What's before you this evening is a request for preliminary and final plan approval for a three-lot subdivision located off of Bailey Avenue, Sacher Way, and Lewis Drive. There are 3 proposed lots. Lot number 1 will be accessed off of Lewis Drive, the cul-de-sac at the end of Lewis Drive. Lot 2 has frontage on Bailey Avenue, and Lot 3 has frontage on Bailey Avenue and Sacher Way. Lot 3 is going to be accessed off of Bailey Avenue across an easement on lot number 2. And I know I have drafted a proposed access easement, and I've sent that to the solicitor for review. All of the proposed lots are conforming lots. We meet all of the dimensional requirements for the R40 district. The planning board, the TRC did provide a favorable recommendation to the planning board with several conditions which are addressed in our plan before you this evening. I did note in Ms. Lavoie's memo to the board that there was a conflict between a note on the plan and a letter that we have submitted as part of our application. We have provided a letter saying that DEM wetland permits are not necessary. There is a note on the plan saying that they may be necessary. We will be revising the plan to remove that note because we have provided a letter from Mason and Associates indicating that RIDEM approval will not be required for this site.
On that point, why don't you get something from RIDEM saying it's not necessary?
Well, I think Ms. Small may be better qualified to answer that question, so I can bring her up right now.
Sorry, go ahead with your presentation.
I think that finishes my summary of the application. I can have Ms. Small come up and go over the technical drawings.
Good evening, Lynn Small, Northeast Engineers, 6 Valley Road. So this is a 3-lot subdivision with existing frontage on both constructed and unconstructed roadways. We have an easement for Lot 3 to gain access through Lot 2 from the extension of Bailey Avenue, which was part of the Salwood Farm subdivision that was approved several years ago. All 3 lots will have access to public water and sewer, and we will have provisions for drainage. Once we have the houses designed, they'll have to go through the soil erosion sediment control review process through Jack Kane's office. They usually forward those design plans over to Warren Hall for review for engineering associated with any drainage. We do have a letter from the biologist of record for the project stating that we don't need a wetlands permit for this project. We do show the edge of the wetland and the 50-foot perimeter wetland associated with that. If you look at the topography of the site, you can see oddly that wetland's at the top of the site, so we know pretty confidently that no one's going to be draining towards that or having any adverse impacts from a drainage perspective in that area. That is why, under this unique situation, we feel very confident that we don't need a wetlands permit application for this project because there is no way to adversely impact that drainage going to that wetland because we're down gradient of it. So I hope that answers your question regarding the wetlands, but we do have that in the file for the record.
I still don't understand why you don't get that judgment from DEM. I mean, even in your letter, it closes by saying, note that only the director can determine if an application is required.
So, I mean, we didn't go forward with getting that judgment from DEM because, like I said, it's uphill from any potential development on that project site. We did the calculations for developable land area. The edge of the wetland is verified, so we know from a code perspective as far as creating the lots of record, we have the required developable land area, the required frontage. If it's a concern with the board that they want, when that lot goes to get developed, to send it through DEM, we could send it through at that point. Right now, we have no improvements proposed on it. So we know for sure that they wouldn't require an application to create this lot. And since we have, like I said, we can't adversely impact the drainage to that wetland because it's not possible to drain to that wetland for this particular site. so I guess the reason why we didn't go formally submit to the DEM for applicability is because we knew absolutely positively that it was not. Usually there may be a gray area, but it's uphill.
Keep going.
That's the best thing I can say. We did have a few requests from the TRC. So what was changed from the preliminary plan submission and the final plan submission? Off of Lewis Drive, you'll see we added a drainage easement so the town can go in there and fix that riprap area if they feel it's necessary. Tom O'Laughlin had asked that the sewer information that we reflect on Bailey Avenue be the existing conditions, as-built conditions of when that was installed for Saltwood Farm, and that is reflected on this plan. They also asked that we provide, if this project goes forward for construction prior to the construction of Sacher Way, which is the next phase of construction on the Saltwood Farm subdivision, that we make provisions so the fire department can turn around at the end of Bailey Avenue prior to building any houses back here. I believe those were the conditions.
They're on the memo. So 3 of the 5 conditions that the TRC, or maybe 3 of the 5 conditions have been satisfied with the final plan. So there were 2 remaining and then 2 additional conditions. So on page 2 of your memo, that second section with the 4 conditions, those are the actual conditions that we'd be recommending that you apply to an approval.
Right, and condition number 4 is already reflected on the final plan. So I don't know if the board has any other questions related to the engineering for this project.
Any questions from the board?
Yes.
Mike and then Bill.
Did you go through the TRC already? Did they say anything about this DEM permit?
They did not. I don't believe that came up. They looked at the drainage in Lewis, the sewer on Bailey Avenue, the configuration of the lots, the accessibility. The fire department was there and they had their concerns regarding the fire, but no one had any concerns with the wetlands. Again, it's uphill.
Yeah.
So I guess normally that would come up. If the grade was going towards it, that would have been something that it probably would have been a condition of the approval to get DEM to sign off on that. But like I said, it's not the situation here. It did not come up at the TRC.
Okay.
Bill and then BJ.
Thank you. So, big picture, and we'll go back to this at the end, but I'm going to start with the big picture and then kind of work my way back to the engineering. Big picture, you talked about access to Lot 2. I get it. I understand the provisions that are in place for Lot 3 and the pavement, the cul-de-sac, pave it, move it in. Big picture, why are we not considering, from a planning standpoint, paving that thing all the way up to Sacher Way? I'll leave that there for now, but, and I want to discuss that with the board and then the applicant, but from an engineering standpoint, which relates somewhat to this, why are we putting the sewer easement and the sewer easement on the property and creating easements? Why are we not keeping that as it's typically done? Why are they not staying within the middle of the road and creating that sewer easement? That to me is not good practice. Creating an easement for Lot 3 to run their sewer through Lot 2 when they have frontage. That to me is a concern. So I would prefer to see all that within the right of way. Frankly, from a planning standpoint, I'd like to see that thing paved, or at the very least, well, that's something that we can talk about as a board, but from an engineering standpoint, again, Lynn, the sewer easement concerns me. The access to Lot 3, all well and good to remove that pavement when it's developed, but there's frontage there. Yeah, the water is being extended to get to that lot. Why not do the sewer the same capacity? The other engineering item I have is the snow removal area, the disposal area. That's great to have there, but if we extend the road, then there's no need for that. But at the very least, if we're not going to extend the road, I'd like more definition on that, or more direction from the TRC or the DPW on, or the engineer on the size of that thing, because, you know, we're gonna push that snow all the way up there. I'd want more definition on that, but the easement, 3 things. Statutory way in general, we can talk about, but the sewer easement on Lot 2 for Lot 3, to me, it doesn't make any sense.
What's that? BJ?
I was wondering about the availability for the fire department to access these lots, and I am in favor of a DEM permit, just because we know the general area very well.
Okay. I mean, I gave our reasons why we didn't feel it was applicable,
I know. We spent a lot of time on the saltwater farm.
Are you all set?
Yes.
Any other comments, questions from the planning board for them?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Markland. I represent Peter Galipeau, who owns the Saltwood Farm subdivision on Bailey Avenue. I do have some questions for Ms. Small, if I might ask those.
Sure.
Lynn?
Lynn? Use the microphone, Dave, the hand mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll use this. Yes, Ms. Small, when you were testifying about the lack of concern relative to the wetlands in the TRC, you met with the TRC for the preliminary plan review, isn't that correct?
yes,
Did you meet again with the TRC for the final plan review?
we did not.
You did not, no. And on the preliminary plan checklist, there is no requirement for the DEM permit, is that right?
I don't have the checklist in front of me, but I do know that Ron will not accept an application for preliminary review without a state permit in hand.
It's required for final on a minor subdivision.
Okay, apologies.
So, for that preliminary plan review, there was no requirement to have any items from DEM. Would that be fair to say?
Yes,
Okay. So the TRC did not have the opportunity to review any DEM-related issues. Is that correct?
I suppose that's fair to say.
Now, you also indicated that development on this lot would not impact the wetlands. Is that fair to say?
That's our opinion, right.
What happens if a home was proposed adjacent to the buffer? Does that have the potential with the drainage to drain toward that wetland?
No,
Not at all?
the wetland's uphill.
So under no conditions, the
If you pumped
developer
it,
wouldn't be able to drain towards that wetland?
not that I can think of.
Okay. Would that require a DEM permit, being that close to the
If you,
buffer?
if you stay outside of the 50-foot perimeter wetland and you cause no disturbance or adverse impacts to the wetland, then you wouldn't be required to have a permit.
Now, you were the engineer of record with respect to the Saltwood Farm subdivision?
Yes.
Is that correct? And do you recall whether or not the property abutting, or the property to the south of the Lewis property, which is now the Bailey extension, was that ever indicated as a public right-of-way on your plans that were submitted?
Under the pre-development conditions, there was, and I don't know how the surveyors ended up in that, is that that portion of Bailey Avenue was considered to be private. Once the Saltwood Farm subdivision was permitted, the proposal was to change that portion of Bailey Avenue into a public right-of-way because the town doesn't have any provisions to accept a private right-of-way. And then, once it was constructed and recorded, it was dedicated to the town. That's my understanding of the process.
All right. And the portion of Bailey Avenue that continues in a easterly fashion, abutting the Tricky property,
Mm-hmm.
do you know whether or not that is public or private?
It's my understanding that you're talking about the section between the constructed portion of Bailey Avenue and the end portion of the constructed portion of Sanchez Way?
Yes.
It's my understanding that that is a public paper street, unconstructed, but it's public.
And why is that your understanding?
Well, our base survey has identified it as a public right-of-way.
Do you know what they based that determination on?
I do not.
And do you know what they call that roadway?
Sanchez Way.
Sanchez Way. I'm going to provide you with a plan that's referenced in that survey, and it's a prior subdivision plan.
You're providing this to me.
Did we not see that? You have a copy of that for us to see, Dave?
No, I've got extra copies. Unfortunately, it's 11 by 17, and I find it challenging myself to
Some bigger eyes.
Thanks.
Looks like something.
Now, what I've showed you is a plan that was prepared by John Braga and recorded as plan number 2009-3, entitled Final Plat, minor subdivision of land, Bailey Avenue, Plat 125, lot 395. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it shows that area abutting the Lewis property as being referenced as Bailey Ave, 40-foot right-of-way, Plat Book 3, page 47. Is that right?
Yes.
Doesn't show Sanchez Way on this.
All the way over towards the right, you can see reference to Sanchez Way, but it's beyond the property line.
That's right. And Sanchez Way then turns toward the south. Is that right?
Yes, that's how he has it reflected.
I'm also going to provide you with a copy of the deed from Charles Gray and Elizabeth Gray to Earl Tricky and Mary Tricky.
Okay.
I've got a copy. much. Have you had an opportunity to review that particular deed and legal description? And would the property described in this deed be the same property that is shown as AP Lot 126, Lot 3?
Yes.
If I might approach, I could just point that out. It would be this property located to the south. And what is the northerly bound of that property described as in the deed?
Northerly by Bailey Avenue, 230 feet by the arc formed by the intersection set of Bailey Avenue with Sacher Way, 29 4/10 feet.
Okay. Now, I'm just going to approach the screen here. That would be this bound of the property, correct?
That's what I believe, yes.
And it's described as Bailey Avenue.
That's what it's saying here, yeah.
Okay. And on your plan, you've described this bound as Sacher Way. Is that right?
That is how it's shown on our plan.
Do you believe that to be accurate and correct?
I would have to check with our land surveyor.
Okay. And one of the reasons why I ask that is Sacher Way is paved through the abutting neighborhood, and that is clearly a public road. However, this portion of Sacher Way is unimproved, that's designated on your plan, correct?
It looks like it's half paved into the site. At the very eastern, it goes maybe 100 feet in.
Yeah, and what does this say?
It says dirt roadway.
Dirt roadway.
Okay,
So
yeah,
it's-
so it's not paved,
it's not
I'm
paved,
sorry.
okay.
Mildly improved.
The, do you understand the basis for the determination you've made on this plan and the contention that that portion of Sacher Way is a public street?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry if you don't understand that, absolutely. What I'm asking is, what is the basis to your understanding that you've indicated that portion of Sacher Way to be a public street?
Again, I would have to check with our land surveyor on what he researched to determine that, or how it was put on that base existing conditions plan.
And you do know that the area of the Bailey Avenue extension, up to this point, where you call it Sacher Way, was a private right-of-way, correct?
I do know that prior to the construction of Bailey Avenue extension, that's part of Saltwood Farm, it was considered a private right-of-way, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Do you have more?
I do have a couple more questions.
I I feel like I'm in a courtroom here, and I'm not sure this discussion is appropriate, but I'd like to know where we're going to end up here.
Yeah,
What's
what is
the
the-
point?
Well, what's the point? One, I'm raising the question as to whether or not this portion that's designated as this unimproved area of Sanchez Way is a public street, what the applicant's relying on to indicate that it's a public street. I'm also going to raise an issue as to whether or not there is sufficient street frontage and physical access as required under the state law and the rules and regulations of.
So in other words, there might be a possibility that the applicant doesn't have the appropriate frontage.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Just, I want to stay with the program so I know where
Yep.
we're going. All right?
Okay.
Thanks.
And I don't have any further questions regarding that.
So shouldn't that get resolved before you come before us?
Well, it's not up to me to resolve it.
Yeah.
It's, I'm bringing
But I
that
mean,
issue
It sounds
out.
like there's a legal issue here.
There very well could be, you know, that's,
We're not a legal body, we don't make those decisions.
but you need to be able to rely on the evidence presented to you by the applicant to make certain findings.
So
One of those
my
findings is-
comment is, shouldn't you get this resolved before you come before the planning board?
Dave, I think that's a question for the applicant, not for.
Yes, yeah.
Had we known about this before this evening, we could have been in a position to address that to the board. It was news to me.
So it sounds like you need to get this resolved and come back with the resolution?
I think we should continue this matter.
Yeah. Request a continuance?
So, I'll bring it up in a discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if we want to continue it, I know the board's got concerns
Well,
about,
we
that
think-
issue of whether it's public or private.
I think you
so
should get this resolved, so
I agree.
when
Let's get
you
it squared
present
away
it,
one way or
it's
the other.
clear. Yeah. So may I have a motion to continue this matter to the March 11th meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to continue this item. Any discussion? Bill?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, it's a question that needs to be resolved, but it goes to my question that I'd like to keep within the discussion on, from a purely planning standpoint, access through there to me, if we're going to consider this in any capacity, you know, I would be an advocate to want to see some consideration given to extending that road if in fact it's a public way. If it's private, then I don't think our hands are tied, and then we do have issues, I believe, with frontage, but that needs to be worked out. And I do also want to keep on the table my concern on the sewer being within Lot 2, and at least put you on notice to address that.
We will.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued to the March 11th meeting.
See you on
The next item is application of Eric and Melissa Curtin for preliminary plan approval of a 4-lot subdivision conventional design, including proposed new roads. The applicant is requesting that the board consider approval of the conventional design previously granted master plan approval, rather than an 8-lot conservation design. Property fronts on Vaucluse Avenue and Summerfield Lane and is located approximately 1,000 feet south of the intersection of Vaucluse Avenue and Peckham Avenue, Assessors Plat 129, Lot 210. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion open, public hearing.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to open the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is open.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Planning Board. Tonight, I'm here seeking preliminary plan approval for Eric Curtin and his wife Melissa for a 4-lot subdivision, which the Planning Board is familiar with. The master plan was approved on September 11th of 2019. The preliminary plan was certified as complete November 21st of 2019. We were here in January, and since that time, a conservation plan was also submitted to the planning board. The conservation plan would allow would propose that the development consist of 8 lots. I think the plan before the board, the conventional plan before the board, is more desirable for a number of different reasons, and I would ask that the board make some findings with respect to that and adopt the conventional plan rather than the conservation plan. In the first place, I think...
Before you go any further, I see 7 lots. Where's the 8th one?
I'm not sure. I thought it was 8. We had a remove on, there's 7. You're correct,
7?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
7?
So there'd be 7 lots as opposed to 4 lots, which are on the conventional plan. I think there's sufficient evidence just on that alone for the board to find that employing the conservation development for the subject property would not offer any significant public and/or environmental benefits. In fact, to the contrary. I think just the lack of density or less density and more open space, which would exist if we do the conventional plan, is more desirable. Compared to the conventional plan, the conservation plan would cause would be more detrimental to the use of the neighboring properties. So I think just those findings, and the board has to make a finding at least of one of those items that are contained in the regulations, which is section, I think it's in Mr. Wolanski's report, and that would be
301D.
section 301D. Having said that, I would move that the preliminary plan be approved. We've covered all the bases we can. We were here last month. I explained to the board that this is a subdivision that Mr. Curtin and his wife are going to retain a lot and build their house on it. I think it's suitable for this area. It's not a high-density plan. This is an R40 zone. These lots are probably double the size that are the minimum size required in the R40 zone. It certainly blends in or is in accord with the comprehensive plan of the town, which it ensures that new subdivisions are of a high quality, which this is. All the other requirements of the regulations have been met by the petitioner and the applicant. He's here tonight. If the board has any direct questions for him or requires any testimony from him, I can do that. Also here tonight is the engineer from Northeastland Small, who's also available to answer any technical questions.
Questions from the board?
Comment? I'll defer to. I support the. I'm going to do this all the time. Conventional.
It's confusing.
It is confusing. I'm going to support the conservation plan. No. I like the 4.
4, that's conventional.
It's conventional. Oh, my. Right? Okay, so that being said, my only concerns are if you heard one of the first earlier petitions relative to the driveways and the turnarounds, I'm assuming those remain in place, the desire to have the full turnaround. And I guess maybe just for clarification that the area in the middle of that donut, if you will, is a grass surface?
It can be.
Is that what the intention is, Lynn?
Yeah, probably.
Probably come up. Yeah.
I think it would be landscaped in some fashion. That would be
Yeah, so just,
sure.
so I would want to make sure we condition it upon that those driveways as depicted on the plan remain as is with a full, turnaround as on the plan. But also, the only other question, and I think I was at the TRC when this came up, the snow, at the end of Summerfield Lane where the snow plow area is, I don't know why I'm on that kick tonight, but I just want to make sure I know the TRC discusses it, and Tom and DPW, but you want to make sure that's adequate. It's hard to tell. I mean, we don't ever give them a size, but I'd like to know.
Tom usually asks for a 10-foot area for snow removal.
Okay, so that's good to know. So I'd like to put that on the plan, but I also like to, I mean, based on from what I can see, and I'm not playing engineer, but the process of plowing snow on a private road into that plow area and backing up and moving, I just want to make sure that that's adequate. And I defer to the DPW, but I just want to make it known, if we're going to put the 10-foot number on there that the DPW likes, then I just want to make sure that it's maybe better identified, maybe hatch it out on the plan.
Yeah, it's labeled.
It's labeled, yes. I see that.
Take the microphone
Does it say 10
with you.
feet? Am I missing it?
Are you asking us to add a 10-foot dimension? You want us to add a dimension to
Yes.
that note? Okay.
Yes, and I'd like you to, frankly, I think it's appropriate to hatch out an area that is dedicated for snow plow and backup, because it's a backup area. That I think a snow removal area, I think it's appropriate to identify that on the plan, so that if there's any question that it's not adequate enough, it's been put on the plan. And as Ron said, Tom asks for 10 feet, put it on the plan, and I'm asking for just maybe a hatched area or an area identified as being turnaround for snow plowing or something to that effect.
And that area is going to be open space, so that should be
Yeah.
we should be able to do that without any problem.
Yeah, I know how Summerfield is down that end, and it's tight anyway, but I want to just make sure, because it's, once you do it once, if you don't do it now, then we get stuck. So if we put it on the plan, I think it's a good practice to get into.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other comments? Michael?
Again, like the last proposal, I like the idea, you know, with the conventional plan only having 4 lots, 4 homes. I think there's a, you know, a good environmental, you know, impact there, you know, so I would approve the conventional plan over the conservation plan.
BJ?
I agree, totally. The conventional plan, it's much, much better, but I'm also interested in a landscaping plan, how that's going to be handled.
This action, they're requesting master plan approval at this point, Ron?
No, this is preliminary.
Preliminary.
So, is this where the engineering gets reviewed?
Yes.
We haven't had any presentation on the engineering. I would like to hear it.
We did do the engineering designs for the project. There are four single-family homes. I'm going to assume that the board is happy with the 4-lot subdivision versus the conservation development. As far as your question regarding 8 lots versus 7, they're allowed by density to get 8 lots, but we could only fit 7 the way we were doing the design, and we weren't going to spend a lot of time on it because it wasn't the goal of our client. So we have a 4-lot conventional subdivision in front of you with shared and individual driveways. They'll all be serviced with private wells and individual septic systems, and they'll be subject to specific review through soil erosion sediment control plan review process with Jack Kane and Warren Hall to make sure that they address all of their drainage concerns. The plans you have in front of you demonstrate that that is possible as long as everyone provides an individual drainage system on their site to capture and provide water quality treatment and some infiltration for their impervious surfaces.
So each site has their own water treatment
That's
capability.
correct. We did do a drainage report that demonstrates that this design proposes a reduction in the peak runoff for the project and meets all the goals of the town. There'll be no increase in runoff to any of the adjacent streets or abutters for the site, and the overall drainage through the property will be reduced.
So this plan has 2 rights of way. Does that mean that there are 2 homeowner associations?
I believe there is one homeowners association, but
Yeah, we don't anticipate 2. We would think it would be 1 homeowners association, if any, that would cover that.
there's only a very small section of shared driveway on this proposal for the 2 lots coming off Summerfield Lane. There's just about 100 feet where they actually share it, but everybody...
But there's a designated right-of-way that has to be maintained.
Yes, and we'll have, the town is going to look to the individual homeowners to maintain the lawns and any landscaping in those areas
In
versus
that
the
right
town
of way.
coming
So
in.
that,
Yeah.
will that be done by the homeowners association?
It will.
Yeah, that's... Other questions?
I have a question here. Lynn? Lynn?
Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
so there's a steep grade on this property, isn't there, right around the area where Summerfield Avenue comes, Summerfield Lane?
Yeah, it does steepen up just uphill of where Summerfield Lane comes into the site.
How does that affect the, your stormwater plan and the runoff issues that you might run into during construction? Is there
Well,
any-
we're anticipating on keeping that area of the site vegetated similar to how it is now, where that steep slope is. That's why we have 2, right? You know, the driveway's coming off Vaucluse and the driveway's coming off Summerfield, because trying to turn up the hill towards Vaucluse from Summerfield Lane is very steep to be able to do with a driveway. So from an engineering and safety perspective, it was just a better design to have those individual driveways come off of Vaucluse. So I don't expect any drainage issue because that area is basically staying the way it is right now. The shared driveway for the rear lots comes into the site just below that slope that I believe you went to the site walk we had, and
Right.
it's just below that steep portion of the slope. So we'll be able to grade that well.
Have all has the area been perked and, septic systems been cited? Or?
It was, I mean, there's a strip of the top portion of this site where you just can't get a very good water table, but we did find suitable water tables throughout the site to support 4 septic systems for this project. They've all been witnessed by DEM and they're on record with their office.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Other comments? Comments? Members of the public, is there anyone who wishes to comment on this application?
Yes, I'm Melissa Yahaya, and I live on Summerfield Lane. I've lived there for 12 years, and Eric is a neighbor of mine. I love living on Summerfield Lane, and I'm thrilled that he's purchased this property and is developing it in the way, or he's building a home there for his family, actually, and thoughtfully given us 4 lots instead of what we had always dreamed from the very beginning. 12 years ago, I thought, who's going to build there? What's it going to look like? Because it's a very private, beautiful place with lots of trees, and I just think that looking at the lots now as I walk through them, it's not going to be very much different. It's really going to be, there's a lot of greenery in there, and they're going to be beautiful homes, and there's only going to be 2 extra houses off of Summerfield, which alleviates any fears that I ever had. So I'm totally thrilled with the plan, and I hope that you go with the conventional versus the conservation plan.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Any
Make a
other
motion to
comments from
close
the
the public
board?
hearing.
Before you do that, I have a question for I guess, the applicant, before we close the public hearing. So, I'm going to ask for, I support the plan, the 4-lot plan, the convention. But I'm gonna ask, and I know I didn't do it in the first earlier petition, but, you know, I'd like to see the circular driveways, if you will, but would it be better for you, and I'm trying to work with you here on, I want some type of a turnaround, so the circular driveway, if I specify that, and then you get a potential owner in there who says, hey, I don't want to do a circular driveway, but I'll do a T driveway or a T turnaround. I'm amenable to that as well, if that would be the easier way for you to sell it to the, yeah. But so that would be my condition, Ron, is that an acceptable turnaround driveway.
Why not just leave it the way it's shown?
Well, yeah,
They're
but
amenable to it.
I just want to give them the flexibility on it.
It's their design that they put forward.
Well, I want a turnaround though. I mean, if somebody comes in and says, I don't want to do the circular driveway, and they just want to do the driveway, the turnaround is for the rescue vehicle, in my eyes.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
and
how I
and
see
you're
it.
not necessarily approving the location of the houses, the
Right.
exact location and design of the
Yeah.
driveway. So I think it's appropriate if you want to specify through a condition that there at least be some sort of turnaround for emergency vehicles.
That's really what I'm trying to accomplish, yes.
And this is only a preliminary plan anyway, so we got to define it.
Sure.
Any other comments from the board? Now may I have that motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is closed.
I'll move.
May I have a motion to accept the conventional design because of reasons 1 and 4, I think, both apply in this case, subject to all the conditions and findings that are specified on the application sheet.
Well, you're going to do two motions, as we did with the last one. So
So
the
the first one
first
is just
motion
the
is
preference.
just to choose which
Yeah.
plan you wish to proceed.
So
and
may I
then
have
we'll
a
do this.
motion to accept the conventional design based on reasons 1 and 4?
Yeah, that's what I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to accept the 4-lot conventional design because of reasons 1 and 4. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes. May I have a motion for preliminary plan approval of the 4-lot conventional design, subject to the conditions of the Technical Review Committee and the required findings, plus the condition requested by Mr. Cash?
Two conditions.
Two conditions.
The snow removal area being approved by the DPW and also the turnaround being acceptable. I'm assuming we would word that acceptable to the fire department
Yes.
at the time of construction.
Correct.
So there's 7 total recommended conditions.
May I have that motion?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded
All right.
to give preliminary plan approval subject to all the conditions and findings so specified. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Thank you very much, members of the board.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 4E, public informational meeting, application of Juan Campos for master plan approval of a 5-lot subdivision, including extension of an existing town road and request for waivers from certain provisions of Article 5 and Article 6 of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land. The applicant is requesting that the board consider approval of the conventional subdivision design rather than a 7-lot conservation design plan. The property is located at the end of Serenity Drive with frontage also on Maidford River Road and is identified as Tax Assessors Plat 120, lots 68A and 68B. Mr. Jackson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. J. Russell Jackson on behalf of the applicants. I'm with the firm of Miller, Scott, Holbrook, and Jackson, 122 Turo Street in Newport. Again, I'm here on behalf of the applicant Juan Campos and his wife Alba. As you know, we, along with other petitioners, were here last month for master plan approval in relation to a 5-lot conventional design subdivision. Last month it came to our attention that pursuant to regulations, it would be appropriate to have a conservation plan filed as well, so that the planning board may take a look at the alternate designs and make a determination as to whether or not it's appropriate to move forward with the 5-lot conventional plan versus the 7-lot conservation plan. The property currently is a 2-lot subdivision. My client acquired the property a couple years ago. Prior to that, the previous owner had subdivided this land into, or a larger parcel, into 3 lots. One was acquired by the Aquidneck Island Land Trust to the east, and then the 2 remaining lots, 68A and B, were acquired by my client. The land is undeveloped at this point. It's approximately 406,473 square feet of total area, with an approximate developable land area of 325,610 square feet. It's in the R40 zone. Briefly, to compare the 2 plans, you see the conservation plan that was submitted. Based on the calculations of our engineer, Lynn Small, it was determined that under the conservation subdivision ordinance, as many as 7 lots could be developed along with an open space lot under the conservation plan development. What the applicants prefer to proceed with is a conventional plan which has 5 house lots. Again, for reasons as you've heard with some of the previous agenda items this evening, I think this as well sort of speaks for itself in terms of which subdivision plan would be most appropriate for the area. We would contend that in your consideration of the elements that have to be looked at to make a determination as to whether or not it's appropriate to go forward with a conventional plan, we believe that the conventional plan does offer benefits to the surrounding area over the conservation plan. Most evident is that having obviously 5 homes developed on the site as opposed to 7 would lessen the traffic in the neighborhood, lessen the environmental impacts in terms of stormwater runoff, in terms of drainage to abutting property owners, and certainly would, we think, would overall be a benefit to the neighborhood. We think the conventional plan has its advantages, and specifically when you take a look at the elements you're required to consider, number 1 being employing conservation development for the subject property would not offer significant public and/or environmental benefits compared to the conventional plan. Again, we believe having fewer lots and having greater land area between those proposed structures and reducing the area of impervious surface are all benefits to the area. The element number 2 that you have to consider compared to the conventional plan, employing conservation development for the subject property would cause a nuisance to neighboring uses and would be detrimental to the appropriate use of the neighboring properties. And again, the area surrounding this property, specifically, I want to say to the southeast, it's already developed along Maidford River Road. Along Serenity Drive, it's already developed, so I think it speaks for itself that having fewer residences in the subdivision would lead to lesser impacts, less traffic, and would be beneficial to the abutting property owners. We have requested certain waivers of the conventional plan, and I just wanted to speak to those briefly. Since the last time we were here, further conversation with our engineer and the property owner has brought us to the point where I wanted to highlight a couple of these waivers and make our position clear. Certainly, we do want to proceed with the request that We reduced the extension of Serenity Drive, that it be 20 feet wide where 26 feet is required. I want to make clear that our client is willing to install sidewalks. We do know that there is a sidewalk on the northwest side of Serenity Drive that exists now, so our client is agreeable to continuing that sidewalk along the northwest side of the Serenity Drive extension to the cul-de-sac. So that's one issue that we wanted to make sure was clear. Secondly, the staff report indicates that we'd be looking for waivers regarding trees. Again, and we do realize that a landscaping plan is not depicted on the current plan at this stage, at the master plan stage. However, we do want to make clear that we are not specifically looking for a waiver from the requirements regarding the planting of trees pursuant to section 622. The applicant intends to employ an appropriate tree planting program and comply with the ordinance as it relates to the planting of trees. So those are a couple issues that I wanted to make sure were understood. Then lastly, the plan that's in front of you, when it was submitted, identified that these subject parcels will be serviced by wells. We do know that that's, although we went through the technical review committee and as presented it was approved, we do know that there are concerns from abutters regarding well water use on these 5 parcels. Lynn can speak to the details regarding what would be required to confirm availability with the city of Newport, but our client would prefer to utilize municipal water services for these lots as opposed to well water. So, you know, provided that there is availability and we can connect as we believe we can through Serenity Drive, although the requirements of that connection have not been hashed out with the city of Newport yet, that would be the plan as well. And I know that's still more towards preliminary approval once master plan approval is done, but I wanted to highlight that as well because I do know that there are concerns regarding what type of impact 5 new wells may have on the area because other abutting property owners are serviced by wells, so that's always a concern. And we do know that that was a question raised by abutters to us this evening in discussions before we started this hearing. So we wanted to make that clear that there's a willingness to make sure that there's municipal water available, and that's the route we'll go if it's available. So with that, I do have the applicant, Mr. Campos, here, just to give a brief statement and answer a couple questions, and then our engineer, Lynn Small, can go through in detail the layout of the conservation development plan as well as the preferred conventional 5-lot plan. Okay.
If I might just interject, Mr. Chairman.
He's not finished with his presentation.
I understand. I just wanted to raise an issue on the record. If you don't want to hear it until after the presentation, it was a procedural issue, and I'm fine raising it.
Are you willing
after.
to let him
If it's a procedural issue, then I would prefer that we know it and hear it now and let the board make a determination.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, David Martland on behalf of the Aquidneck Island Land Trust, which owns the property directly abutting this property. In reviewing the file today and the regulations associated with a master plan review, I see that in section 407 of the master plan review, B1C, that initial comments are supposed to be obtained from local agencies, among those including the Conservation, Tree, and Recreation Commissions. I didn't see any of those comments in the planning record, and I was wondering if those had been solicited, and if not, then I think they do need to be solicited prior to this meeting. I think that's really a question for,
Yeah, we have in the past taken them with the preliminary plan.
I think being solicited is one thing, having them is one thing, but at least have they solicited them is another. Can the applicant answer that, maybe?
I mean, I think that's a question directed at the administrative officer.
I think most of the time, master plan here is a very, very bare bones conceptual idea. Preliminary plan would flesh out many more of those details, include engineering, landscaping, etc. So
I don't disagree with you, Mr. Weber. I think the objector is raising a procedural issue that's listed under the regulations for master plan approval, and it's not a question that I can answer because it has to do with whether or not the administrative officer has solicited comment from certain departments. My only argument would be that I don't know that the ordinance or state statute requires that specific solicitation be in writing, that certain memorandum of documents be committed to the file. So if there's no written evidence of solicitation in the file, I don't know that it's conclusive on the subject, and I would argue that if Mr. Wolanski has circulated notice to these departments within the municipality, that I would believe that would be sufficient, but I can't speak for him.
So we need to hear from someone at that table.
I don't see anything in the file indicating that those particular boards were solicited for comment. We have a memo directed to town staff and the Roads and Utilities Committee, but those cited by Mr. Martland, I don't have a memo indicating that they were solicited for comments.
Ron, is that practice, is that something, I mean, obviously, respectfully, you have your hands full, I understand, but, you know, whether it's a requirement, as it says in the master plan, but your common practice is to, obviously, if it's a red flag, if there's something that's out there that you want to get input on, if it's something that we need to know about, then you're going to solicit that, but is it that egregious, I guess, Pete, although we can't show evidence in the file of that, is it appropriate to move forward without any danger of appeal or anything of that nature?
Well, this section, the first two subsections here are really the submission requirements for the applicant, and I'm assuming that those requirements were met within the required time frame. And then the third subsection, subsection C, indicates that really the planning department will solicit comments. It doesn't say that those comments have to be received. It says that they have to initiate and solicit comments from, you know, the appropriate parties. There's a list there, you know, and it does use the words "as appropriate." So
does that have to be done prior to certifying it complete?
No, it's not a checklist, a submission checklist item, if that's your question. So the application was certified complete, but that's separate from the solicitation for comments.
I just don't, I mean, I'd like to go forward, but.
We just have a moment, please.
Yeah, take a moment.
Can I make a comment? On a previous application for master plan approval by Mr. Lynch.
Mr. Chairman, can we just maybe take a 5-minute recess?
5-minute recess.
Thank you.
and Mr. Martland, I think Mr. Regan indicates that the prudent course would be for this petition to be continued next month so that that potential procedural issue can be resolved prior to commencing or completing the hearing. We have commenced with comments, at least at this point. So the applicant would be agreeable to have the matter continued to next month so that the issue can be resolved and it doesn't become a basis for appeal to the zoning board. With that being said, we would also be open to having this application, any revisions to the conventional plan as well as the conservation plan that was submitted last month. We'd be happy to go back to TRC between now and the next meeting to make sure that TRC has vetted both plans prior to your consideration next month, so that again we eliminate any potential issue that would get in the way of your consideration of this plan.
I think that's a good idea. I'd move continuance based on the representation of the applicant, and then it goes, that both plans go to TRC for further review.
Second.
To the next regular meeting, is that?
Yes, please.
March 11th.
March 11th.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? I'd like to raise a point with you, if I may.
Yes, sir.
In your plan, you propose a 20-foot roadway.
Yes.
Be advised that at Monday night's town council meeting, the town council rejected a proposal to go to 20-foot wide roadways. So I just give you that information now.
Thank you.
Planning board, by the way, the planning board still has the option to approve it, but that's the wishes of the town council. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued to the March 11th meeting.
Thank you.
Just let them know that the applicant's not here, I'll recuse them.
Is this yours?
I'll tell you. The next item on the agenda is item 4F. A public hearing, request of James Paradise, owner of property at 170 Aquidneck Avenue, Plat 115 SE, lots 145, 146, 147, for waiver of development plan review pursuant to Section 908 of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is not present for this item, so I would recommend that it be continued to the next meeting. We believe that what happened was he was not present at the last meeting when this month's meeting was rescheduled, so he may not be aware that we're meeting tonight, so he is not here.
It's within the purview of the planning board to continue this?
Mr. Chairman, although I am recusing on this matter, I did just get a text from Mr. Galvin asking that it be, he was not aware of tonight's hearing and asking that it be continued to the next meeting.
Thank you.
So moved.
May I have a motion to continue this to March 11th?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to continue this to the March 11th meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued to the March 11th meeting. It's now 8:20. What I'm going to do is move some of the new business applications from Section 5 up ahead of 4G and H, which are planning board items. So the next item on the agenda is item 5A, application of JOJF LLC, final plan approval for a two-lot minor subdivision of land located at 527 Aquidneck Avenue, Plat 114, Lot 242.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Martland on behalf of the applicant, JOJF. This was a matter that has been previously before the board on a preliminary plan approval, which was given conditional preliminary plan approval subject to obtaining a zoning variance for frontage, which was obtained, the decision's recorded, so we're back here seeking final plan approval. Also obtained the DOT permit, which would involve the relocation of the existing driveway to the south, and it would be a combined access for the parcels. So all the state permits have been obtained, the zoning variants have been obtained. There are no other revisions or changes to the plan that you had previously seen. It still contains the row of arborvitae located to the east, as requested by the abutter. I really don't have anything further to add.
Mark, can you touch on your memo, the two conditions that?
Yeah, these are just standard conditions, one being a note regarding the development impact fee requirement and a note regarding the requirement to comply with stormwater management ordinance. These are standard notes that are added to the plans that have not yet been added to this plan. So the recommendation would be, if you're going to approve final plan tonight, that those notes be added prior to recording.
So we did that plan at preliminary, and they haven't done it since.
Correct.
Thank you. Both of them,
Yes.
but they're just general notes.
Yep.
Just a question, how is it that the zoning board approved the variance before we did get the preliminary? plan
You
approved?
approve preliminary subject to zoning.
Subject to it, okay. Thank you. So, any comments from the planning board?
The existing home there, is it also on a well? Is the existing home on a well there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, the water is not located in that portion of Aquidneck Avenue.
Okay. There is sewer there?
There is sewer.
So, assuming.
Yeah. BJ?
No, and looking at the map here, I am noticing that the potential for the driveway has moved.
BJ, get closer to the mic.
Oh, the potential for the driveway has moved. It was right in front of the house when we went to see the house. Then we walked over to the lot and back. So since that time, it seems that there have been a number of changes in that the house has been up for sale or something, or?
Yeah, so after the site visit, site walk,
Yes.
we revised the plan to relocate that driveway, which was the plan that was before the planning board at the preliminary plan approval. So we moved it down to the south to have a joint access in that location.
Yeah.
It seemed to be a better spot to pull it further away from the abutting property to the north.
The intersection, actually.
Yes.
Other comments from the planning board? May I have a motion for final plan approval of this item?
So I'll move approval based on the memo, which has, that they've met the required findings, as indicated in the memo dated January 27th, with 4 conditions now, Ron? 2 that are indicated already on the memo?
Just the two,
Impact
unless...
fees, or
It's
the other
just-
2 that,
It's just the two, because what I've done is attach the previous approval, so don't look at the preliminary plan approval memo. Look at the top memo. There's 2 proposed conditions for
I
final
am, but
approval.
that's why I asked earlier, those 2 conditions from the preliminary plan weren't necessarily carried over. I want to make sure that they're carried over too.
Those are the 2.
Those are the 2?
Yep.
Did I miss that? Oh, you're right, my bad. Yeah, correct. So 2 conditions.
Yep.
Move approval based on the memo, meets the required findings with those two conditions.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded for final plan approval with the cited conditions. Is there any discussion?
Are there six things that would be part of the final
Can
approval?
you speak in the microphone? sir?
Yeah, are there 6 items? You just mentioned 2. I'm seeing it's the August 28th.
Those are all done
Yeah.
already.
So those are all,
Yeah.
those aren't applicable.
It's the two on the January 27th.
Okay,
memo.
thank you.
Other comments? Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion
Thank you.
passes.
No procedural issues or anything? Sure, come on, make it up, please.
Next item on the agenda is item 5B. Public hearing. Request of Iron Gate Properties LLC for waivers from certain design standards of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, Section 521, for proposed renovation siding materials of an existing commercial building located at 438 East Main Road, Assessors Plat 113, Lot 13. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion made to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to open the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is open.
Yeah,
Applicant?
may I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, my question, this is at the corner of Forest Avenue and East Main Road?
Yes.
Right. I was told that the building may be up for sale. Is that true?
Well, we did entertain and signed a purchase and sales agreement, but after we did that, they came back and asked for an open-ended extension so they could get all their approvals they were looking for, and we just didn't want to sit on it.
For the record, could you identify yourself, please?
I'm sorry, my name's Mike Sullivan. I'm the manager for Iron Gate Properties.
Thank you.
Yes,
LLC.
I have another. Yes, I was very much interested in that because I was sort of hoping that that's the type of building the town may be interested in for senior housing, because I know it had been apartments beforehand and then had been redone. Has the town approached you at all?
I've not
Maybe you
heard from the
should
town.
approach the town. I don't know.
Okay, but that's, I know that's always a possibility, but right now, I'm just looking at, I need to get it re-sided, so,
And you did a very nice job on the stone wall.
thank you.
I want to remind the board that this is not for full development plan review, so we're just considering the waiver request for vinyl siding. Any other questions? Other questions? Comments?
No,
Art.
Mr. Sullivan, 2 things. We have, for about the last 1,000 years, tried to make our town look like it's from New England, whatever that means. And we sort of have an idea of what that means, but it doesn't involve vinyl going over bricks. In fact, we prefer to see bricks over vinyl. So I would ask you to perhaps explore something else that will protect your building that's not vinyl. It's particularly sensitive, I think, on the main roads. I mean, if you were buried back in the airport or something, I wouldn't care too much. But where we have opportunities to make our town look like a New England town, I'm really a zealot on that. I've got to say that, and I hope we can find a solution that protects your building, but it also protects the architectural integrity we're trying to establish.
The building was built in the mid-'60s. It's not a historic property, and right now it's more or less a Class C office building, which is partially occupied, and in part due to, having to use stairways and not have an elevator access, so.
Other applicants have come in and proposed using composites, which have all the durability and maintenance-free properties that are probably attractive to you, and they look much more like the natural New England materials.
We've talked about that, but just economically, it's not, it doesn't look feasible.
Comment?
I didn't hear the last part of your response.
My recommendations were that it was not really economically feasible to site it in a composite material.
Question?
Bill?
Mr. Sullivan, in your letter, or letter from John Brooks, your contractor, it looks like, he states that the brick veneer is taking in rainwater and beginning to damage the wood frame building under the brick. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, the problem, from what I've found, goes back to when it was originally constructed. It lacked flashing, it lacks a brick shelf, so if there's any break in the mortar, then I get the possibility of water coming in.
So you just, so it's the assumption by the contractor that it's, do you see the damage on the inside of the wall and on the inside of the building? If we were to go there and see it, is there damage on the inside that is visible?
I've had damage repaired.
Okay, so I've got, just a comment, I support it. I can't support putting vinyl over a brick veneer like that. I think you need to find a better way to repair this. It just doesn't work for what we do here in Middletown, I'm sorry.
Any other comments from the board? May I have a motion for a favorable recommendation on this waiver request?
I'll make the motion to grant a waiver on this application.
Do I have a second?
I'm sorry, what's that?
The motion is for a favorable recommendation on the waiver request.
No, it's to grant the waiver.
To grant the waiver.
Grant the waiver.
Do I have a second? We need a second for a vote. Do I have a second?
So for the record, I don't support this. I think that's clear, but I think we need a positive. We need a positive.
Okay, I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to provide a favorable recommendation for the waiver request.
To approve the waiver.
Approve the waiver.
To approve the waiver, thank you. To approve the waiver. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Nay. Motion fails.
Poor guy's been here
The next item on the agenda is item 5C. Request of Peter Galipeau, developer of Saltwood Farm Subdivision, Bailey Avenue and Sanchez Drive, Plat 126, Lot 4, for approval of revisions to the previously approved open space management plan. Are you Mr. Galipeau?
I am, Peter Galipeau, 15 Sanchez Drive.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Did we get something, before you do that, my agenda doesn't have it, I missed something. Is this where you put it on our desk?
I sent out, I think by email, a revised agenda. It's been posted properly.
Is that it?
And that's the document, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there was a open space management plan that was reviewed and approved during the approval process for my development. And inadvertently, it was not recorded at the time the conservation easement and the maintenance easements were recorded. And at this time, I have a couple of contracts to sell lots in the first phase of the development, and the attorneys for the purchasers had approached me about making some modifications to the open space plan. And so in a way, it's fortuitous that I had overlooked recording this particular document. It didn't call for notarization, so I actually didn't realize that it had to be recorded at that time. The primary change that was proposed was to have the owners of the lots share in the, each have an undivided 1/12 interest in the open space, rather than have the open space owned by the homeowners association. An association has been formed, it's been incorporated as a nonprofit corporation in Rhode Island. And I think the genesis behind that idea was to, by having lot owners own a fractional interest in the open space, the assessor would assess a portion of the value of the open space to all the owners as part of their tax bills. And that would facilitate the real estate taxes getting paid, so no owner fell behind, and the association itself was forced to pony up to cover the difference. And additionally, there was a feeling that the liability insurance of each homeowner would extend to the open space and thereby extend more coverage for liability purposes than, say, the policy that the homeowners association would have on the property. Otherwise, the only cost-sharing difference there is that the homeowners association is not paying the taxes, the homeowners are. And there is provision in the regulations for the eventuality of conveying the open space to the individual homeowners, and the requirement was that the deed to the homeowners include that undivided fractional interest in the open space, and that the deed recites the restrictions, the conservation easement, the maintenance easement, and the other restrictions on the open space, which of course is fine. I think the remainder of the proposed changes, we moved some things around to primarily clarified that my responsibility for the cost of the improvements and the period during which I would be responsible prior to the homeowners association taking over responsibility for management of the open space and maintenance of, in particular, the drainage systems. I'd be happy to address any particular change or any concern you may have as to what change was being made and what the intent was. I think the aggregate of the changes were sufficient, that staff felt that it was a matter that in totality consisted of a major change, and it was necessary to come back and run these things through the planning board. But I think the major change is with respect to the ownership of the open space.
Well, yes, we've reviewed the revised open space management plan. I believe the solicitors reviewed it, and we're supportive of the changes that are being proposed. And as Mr. Galipeau suggested, the plan was approved, the original plan was approved by it was a prior planning board, but the planning board did approve the prior open space management plan, and because of the extent of the changes, the solicitor recommended that this revised plan be forwarded to the planning board for your approval prior to it being recorded.
Yeah. And I did review it, as Ron said. I think it's an improvement over what was previously done. From an enforcement standpoint, on behalf of the town, I prefer that the open space be owned by the lot owners individually rather than an association, which may become defunct at some point in time, which has caused us problems in other areas. So I think what's being presented to the board tonight is an improvement over what was previously approved.
This document will get recorded?
Yes.
Obviously, with all the Christmas colors in it? Right.
Hold on a second.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, lately another issue was raised by the purchasers, and I'm happy to accommodate them. They're requesting that the gravel access drive provides access to my home through the open space, as well as provides access for maintenance vehicles and inspection vehicles from the town. but they've requested that I limit commercial vehicles, deliveries and that sort of thing on that access drive. And that's perfectly fine with me. At the present moment, I've extended Bailey Avenue, and most of my service is coming that way. It's the fastest route. It's the safest route. Even a commercial vehicle that might come down Sacher's Way to Sacher's Drive to my property would be coming down the new Saltwood Drive that is slated to go in, the new street to get to my house. So the point being, I may propose some further restrictions on the use of the open space so that the traversing it is simply for personal access, if you will, to Lot 9, rather than any kind of commercial vehicles. Now, I know that people get lost sometimes. They're following GPS, and I've had people drive through my property, and we want to try to limit that as much as we can. So we would be posting a no, private property, private drive type sign at the entryway off of the cul-de-sac. To those who may not be familiar with this, there's a gravel drive from the end of Sacher's Drive, the cul-de-sac, that meanders through the open field and is raised up somewhat from the existing grade and provides a barrier to water so it can be channeled and into a swale and then directed under the drive into a detention basin, so that the gravel drive is sort of integral to the whole drainage design in the first place, and was we were encouraged to provide access by DEM for maintenance vehicles to some of these detention features in the open space. So the other change I might suggest that's not in this draft, something that I hope staff can review and approve, would simply be some additional restrictions on the use of that drive, so that it doesn't get overburdened.
BJ, then Mike.
Yes, my question is about your open space. Who's going to mow it and maintain it? Because it says here, it's anticipated, wait a minute, it's also will be maintained by routine mowing and not be permitted to develop into woodlands, but that's been crossed out. Who's going to mow?
Well, the open space is to be managed by a homeowners association, and that will continue. And so the homeowners association would contract with a landscaper to provide those services. In recent years, David Rodericks has hayed it twice a year, and that's been generally sufficient to prevent woody growth. He doesn't hit all of the areas that his equipment can't reach, so I've used a tractor, but we would be hiring an outside contractor.
Mike?
Maybe this question's for Ron, but didn't we just talk about Bailey Avenue and its connection to, Sanchez Way there? Wasn't there an issue with private property there, and maybe that connection is up in the air type of stuff?
It's related, but not directly to what's on the agenda. That the subdivision, the the Saltwood Farm subdivision has already been approved, and phase 1 has been recorded. So there's no issue in terms of access or anything like that.
Okay.
Art?
Pete, I just have a suggestion. As a homeowner in an association, we're wrestling with detention pond insurance, umbrella, personal liability insurance. So I think something to think about once you get rolling there is what kind of insurance should homeowners have to protect themselves if somebody gets hurt in the open space area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well taken.
Other comments? I just have a question. Can you go over the difference? There's going to be a homeowners association, yet the homeowners are going to own 1/12 each of the open space? Is that what I'm hearing?
So there's you think about it, there's two different things going on. There's one is who owns this separate open space parcel, and then who's responsible for maintaining it.
So the 1/12 is for the ownership of the property.
simply for the ownership, for taxes, and as I said, from the town's perspective, I think that's more beneficial from an enforcement point of view. And then the association, the same people are all members of the association, and the association as a whole has a responsibility to abide by the restrictions.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other comments? So we need to approve these revisions. Oh,
Good evening,
please.
Mr. Chairman. My name is Frank Holbrook. I live at 18 Baldwin Road in Middletown. I'm also, just for full disclosure, assistant solicitor for the town, but I'm here in my private capacity as a purchaser of a lot that Mr. Galipeau is selling. So I'm in agreement with his proposed changes and would ask the board to support it. We did discuss the use of the gravel access in terms of commercial vehicles going across it. I think we're in agreement that that would be prohibited, and that the town planner could work out the language as to that, and that they'd be a posted no trespass, private property, road sign in front of the entrance to the gravel access.
So if you're going to approve the revised draft, it would be subject to that revision that was just suggested, if that's acceptable.
In other
to the
words, we don't
board.
want, from my perspective and a couple other, there's another purchaser, a UPS truck coming across, the gravel access, or a FedEx truck coming across the gravel access, because there's access on Bailey Ave for all the lots for those commercial vehicles.
That's not a concern of the towns.
Why wasn't that put in here, though?
It just was discussed recently, but that's the language.
So you want to make another revision to the revision?
No, we're in agreement that that be done. It's just subject to the town planner working out the
Stay
language.
close to the microphone.
Sure, we're in agreement that that be done, just that the town planner work out the language to that extent.
So we could
if you approve the motion, you would
subject
approve
to-
it with the notation that staff would approve that last revision, limiting access on the gravel road, so.
That okay with everyone?
It's fine. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion then to approve the revised, the revisions to the open space management plan, subject to staff approving the revision to the revision.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Build a nice house.
Okay, we can return to item 4G on the agenda. Item 4G, review the revised draft of potential amendments to the Middletown Town Code regarding creation of an incentive program to promote preservation of historic buildings and resources. So what we have is the latest draft after the last public workshop that we had.
Correct. So this draft incorporates the changes that were.
Can you summarize the changes quickly, Ron? Could I ask you to do that?
So one of the major topics of discussion was the desire to increase the incentives for preservation and also for the rehab incentive from 5% for secondary resources, 10% for primary, up to 10% incentive for secondary resources and 20% for primary resources. In the memo, the cover memo that I gave you, it summarizes the impact that has on tax revenue coming into the town. The overall impact, obviously, by doubling the incentives, doubles the impact on tax revenue. There was also discussion, and it's included in this revised draft, of allowing that the incentive for rehabilitation projects to be carried over into a second year if necessary, if the incentive that would be granted would exceed the amount of taxes paid in that first year, you would allow that to carry over into the second year to allow the property owner to achieve the full incentive. So once all of that is factored in, based on lots of assumptions of how many projects we might see in a year, we had previously talked about that it would have a roughly $100,000 impact in tax revenue per year. So with these changes that you've requested, we're doubling that to a $200,000 potential, based on all the assumptions, impact on tax revenue per year. So that's, in my mind, a red flag for the planning board to consider as you consider whether or not this is going to proceed. You would be going to the town council requesting and recommending that those incentives be adopted, recognizing the impact it would have on tax revenue. You would have to defend that.
By the way, I think it's worth mentioning that these changes were strongly advocated by John Grosvenor, who sits on a state historic commission, and pointed out that the higher tax incentives are much more effective in keeping these historic properties and resources preserved.
Assuming this goes to the council, we need to reach out to him and make
Show up at the meeting?
Show up at the meeting and help us defend the tax loss versus the historic.
Yeah, because he spoke with a lot of experience about how these incentives work and are effective, so it would be good if we could do that.
Well,
Yes, BJ?
it would be nice if a copy were sent to the Historical Society of Middletown for their opinion on it too, because they would be perhaps instrumental in helping it along.
You mean to have them review the draft? Well, I was hoping we could...
They were already involved.
They were involved in it. I don't know that they've seen this latest revision, but they
that's
were
what I mean.
involved with the earlier drafting.
They were involved, yeah, and they
Yeah.
send them the draft that we have now.
Sure.
Yes, if you could send them the draft now.
As long as they support it.
Well, the concern I have is, I thought we could act on this this evening,
Okay.
but on the other hand, it's important for them to see it. Do you think you're on the Historic Commission?
We have a meeting tomorrow at 5:30 at Paradise School.
Would they accept something on such short notice?
Well, I will take my copy and ask them to review it.
Well, do you think we could act on this evening? And
I think so.
okay, very good. I
And I'll take this to them
wholeheartedly
tomorrow.
support your bringing the draft to the meeting. Any other comments on this draft?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Ron, thanks for doing this, and again, you and Kevin and Rita all done a great job, I think, on pulling this together. My question is, and it's been so long since I looked at this, did we, the last bullet point in the memo, we took away that allowance for an extra unit, density bonus unit?
Yep, there was, as part of the public workshop, there was some opposition to allowing increased density. And the decision at the end of that discussion by the board was to take it out.
Really?
Yep.
There was a sense that the benefits should be given to homeowners, not developers.
I don't think I was here for that. I think I missed that meeting. So
You
I
may
would
have had it. You may
I
have
would have
had it, yeah.
spoken up, but I think
Yeah,
it's
but that was
the other way around.
that was
but-
the rationale. Any other comments? May I have a motion to accept this draft and to send it forward to the town council for their approval?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to accept this draft and forward it to the town council for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item is item 4H. Discuss possible recommendation to the town council for consideration of adoption of a wastewater management district plan and ordinance. This is yours, Art.
Okay, let me just give you a couple of little things that are important. The comprehensive plan, which is adopted by the council on 3/2/15, Chapter 3, page 18, talked about the town should establish a wastewater management district. And no action was ever done. So we did this before. This is an exercise times 2. And we sent a memo off to the town council signed by Mr. Croce on 5/10/18. Nothing happened. Out of the blue, I got a call from the president of the town council who asked me to come to a council meeting a couple of weeks ago and talk in a public forum, and I did. The other thing that reinforces the urgency for this, in the build-out plan, which we went through the other night, it's mentioned again. And I think when we're talking about wells and a lot of things on the east side, this is a plan that's long overdue. So I would recommend, again, we send a memo requesting the town council adopt, the ordinances and everything are all done, but that they take action on our recommendation.
The town council president indicated to me that he is supportive of this, but there are other members of the town council who are resistant, and therefore he really would like some assistance in pushing this. So my question is another memo what they're looking for? Is that adequate?
Well, I don't know what else our options are.
What are our options? Can we sue the town?
I would think, Mr. Chairman, that given the build-out study, that you have support there for the position that the board has taken on this, and
So
ultimately.
maybe we could draft another memo that references the build-out that will be in their hands, or you said they have the draft.
I don't think they have it officially, and I would suggest that you would wait to send your recommendation on the wastewater management district, wait until the build-out study is finalized, which it is not yet.
But I'm thinking the impact study would add weight to the...
Yes, but I'm just suggesting wait until that's finalized before you send the memo that you're considering sending.
So we should hold off on doing anything now.
We could table it then.
The question is, remind me of the status of the impact study.
The board members were going to be getting us any additional comments on the draft this week, so we'll wait until Friday for that. Those comments, and I've already sent my comments to Steve, questions and some requests for revisions to Steve Cabral. He'll be producing a final draft, and then following that, it would be in condition to send forward to the town council.
So once you will receive comments from the board members, transmit that to Steve. Steve will prepare the final draft. The final draft will then come back to you, and then what happens?
Well, we were going to put that on the next agenda, the March 11th agenda for the board, to basically receive the final draft and vote to forward it to the town council.
Okay, very good. So we will table this item until we receive the final draft of the impact study.
Yeah, and I think we should wait, not spring it on them again. We'll let them take a look at the study if they ever read it, and they'll see it's also in there, and then we can put on MOA and reinforce by...
Well, my guess is when we receive the final draft on the 11th, we would propose a presentation to the town council.
Right.
So, I have no problem moving on this tonight, but...
Well, let's table it.
Sure.
Let's table it.
You know, the whole thing about presenting to council, you know, we've seen it 100 times, is, especially with the plan the other night, you know, a presentation with maybe a takeaway for them, a summary, bullet-pointed, things that are going to be politically sensitive to them, because that's what it's about, frankly, up there. And I just want to give them something that they can hang their hat on and say, why do we need to do this? We all know why, but they're not going to read this. is my point, and I'm trying to give them something that's,
Well, they have the waste management plan already. They have this
you
stuff.
think they've read it?
I can't answer that question.
I have a question. Why was there some negative response to,
I think part of it was timing. I think, if I recall correctly, this was being considered around the same time as the Stormwater Management District and some other things, and just surmise on my part, but I think it was just...
Well, the reality of this plan includes a mandatory inspection system. So there would be an orderly inspection of all the septic systems, and people would be enforced, which the language is in the ordinance, either to repair or replace if they have a problem. But the other benefit of having this wastewater management ordinance in place, it automatically opens low-cost loans from DEM to help people repair and replace. And Portsmouth, who had to do this for legal reasons, also has a bond set up there to help people. So if your system fails, you're not looking at $25,000 up in your face. So there's a couple of advantages of having this done, and I think what we've been talking about the last couple of months, water and wells and everything else.
So
seems like a no-brainer.
It does.
And I think the other thing from the build-out, I think the build-out plan is, it should generate some action items from the council for us to do, much like, I look at it as a mini comp plan kind of thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get some direction on other projects too.
So,
Thank you.
do we need a motion to table something?
Move to continue it to next meeting, that's fine.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion is made and seconded to continue this item to the next meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Item is continued. Item 6A, updates. Excuse me, anybody have any comments on the updates?
Oh, I have one.
Yes, PJ?
The tree commission would like everyone to remember that April 18th to the 26th, there are Earth Day activities being planned throughout the entire island, Aquidneck Island. And the tree commission is going to be presenting something. Probably the town council will also. But I just thought I would bring it up, along with the fact that I gave everyone the tree commission's latest brochure. So please take a look at it, and if you want to get a tree for your property, it's
You gave
there.
us a treat too, thank you.
And, yeah, oh, that was for Valentine's.
Okay, I think that's your tree commission report, but I'm looking at this update report right now. Any comments on the update report? Items? Project update. Any comments? No comments. Let me see.
No, that was for the BMW. But the fire trucks were there today in front of the BMW. Fire trucks, everyone was outside the building. I didn't know what had happened. I don't know if anyone knew.
I have nothing on the use table, but I do have a question.
Okay, hold on a sec. No comments on the update status report. Rural Village, I take it, is on hold. Use table, no comments from use table, you said?
Nothing on the use table.
You have a meeting coming up, or?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, very good.
Tomorrow. So,
Marijuana, we're trying to get a meeting scheduled, right?
We're trying to, I spoke with DBR. The proposed regulations are somewhat in limbo pending this bill that is in front of the General Assembly right now, and we should know the outcome of that sometime within the next week. And if it goes one way, the regulations could be approved within 2 to 3 weeks. If not, they could be going through the process all over again, but we should know probably within a week what that's going to look like.
Okay. John, you have anything to add?
I got a couple emails today. I've not had time from Dwight, I think it was. I have not had time to read them.
Okay.
I've just been very busy today.
Airport
We do have a
zoning?
meeting coming up.
Airport zoning?
Yeah, Ron, on airport zoning, we had a meeting on that a couple weeks ago, was it?
Yep. And the conclusion with the solicitor's help was to proceed as on the track that we were on, which was that more limited version of an overlay district based on the westerly model. So the subcommittee approved sending that back to the planning board, so that'll be on the agenda for the March meeting.
Okay, very good. And Tree Commission, you have anything else to add, BJ?
Just the BMW discussion was held by the Tree Commission at a special meeting that they attended. And the landscaper for the group arrived and explained everything, and they came to an agreement. And it was
So the
nicely
Tree
written up.
Commission
Yes.
approves what BMW is proposing?
Yes, yes, yes. They did, and because the BMW people added in what the Tree Commission suggested.
Good, very good. Open Space and Fields?
They started the process of scoring properties. They have a scoring system, and I guess they're evaluating certain open spaces around the town, and they're using various criteria to score them. And I guess they're starting. They did it with one particular property already, and I'm not sure what what they're going to do with the results. I think the idea was that if some land might become available to the town, they would use this scoring criteria to evaluate whether it's worthwhile purchasing or not. So they started that process.
And you had to deal with a pickleball request too, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, yes. That was the previous meeting, the pickleball people came, and made their presentation. And, so we forwarded, they forwarded, the Open Space Fields Committee forwarded a recommendation to the town, to...
It was approved by the
They got some pickleball questions? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Conservation Commission.
Yeah, we finally met last week. There were 2 items on our Conservation Commission agenda. Both were items that we had weighed in on here on the planning board. One of them was the West Main Road car wash, gas station, dog wash facility. And the other was the Acacia Drive demolition of 2 residents and, to a single family home.
What did the Conservation Commission recommend on the car wash and gas?
Just adherence to best practices in terms of stormwater management, and that's everything flows into eventually the public Middletown sewer. So they reviewed extensively the recommendations that we had made as on the planning board, and both items were unanimously approved by the Conservation Commission to move forward. So,
very good. Zoning Board approved the application eliminating the requirement that we have the New England materials. Yeah. The Zoning Board approved the project, but they eliminated the requirement that we added to use New England style finishing materials. The car wash and, yeah. Ask them.
The
Aquidneck Island Planning Commission.
Paul, could you repeat that again?
all right, go get them.
The
Aquidneck Island
zoning,
Planning Commission,
Dog
we,
board.
hold on, the zoning board
Yep.
approved that application,
Okay.
but did not accept the recommendation of the planning board that the applicant use the New England style finishing materials.
So
It will go in, it will go in with the stucco Tudor style that was proposed.
it's going to resemble Hitler's CP in Germany. But
Berkshire
we,
Okay.
Aquidneck Island Planning Commission met. We had a wonderful time. We talked about the Island Waters Program, which is
excuse me.
doing detention work in an organized fashion. Also, the West Side Master Plan update, and several members of the staff have been very helpful in Newport in trying to come up and look at the correct options for the bridge and the off-ramps.
Yeah, good, good, very good.
And with that, ladies, we can...
And the upcoming meetings are listed there. You mentioned that there's a use committee tomorrow?
Yep.
At
3 o'clock, Ron?
Yes.
And as far as I know, these are the only meetings we have scheduled right now.
26.
I think so, yeah. The next one would be on the 26th of February, which is a public workshop on the West Main Coddington.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I just have a question. Thank you, Ron, for giving us the decisions, and also the zoning board results from January 28th. Interesting, the Atlantic Beach Suites withdrew without prejudice one of their applications.
That was an application that we had not yet forwarded to you. It was an incomplete development plan review application to put an addition onto the existing building. So it's not one of the new hotels. It was going to be an addition on an existing building, and they withdrew that.
Interesting. Thank you.
Now may I have a motion to adjourn?
No.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Ron.
Made it. Excuse me. Next week. Sunday.